Welcome to the Enter the Mind podcast.
The most real talk, no nonsense podcast on the empowering of the mind.
Why enter the mind? Because it's that room in your house that's been there all along that you've never gone into.
Well, now it's time to enter with two mind coaches dedicated to self-help and the thriving of all human beings.
I'm Kyra Carlin.
And I'm Robert Nelson.
Welcome to Enter the Mind.
Today, we're going to be talking about common self-help advice. Kyra, do you want to introduce the topic?
Yeah, so I thought of it today, and thank you. And I was thinking of it today, and I was like, I think it'd be really cool to go over just like common tips for life and like common advice for life that like some of us like, some of us don't like. And I figure I'd bring my attention to it as well as Robert's so we can both give our own opinions and, maybe just speak, bluntly about it. I think it'd be pretty cool, if we like it, if we don't like it, like what are our thoughts on it, sort of thing. So I thought that was a cool topic. Robert, do you have any specific one on your mind?
Yeah, well, I think there's a common one. It's interesting because I can actually trace back to my whole self-help journey, so to speak, because there's different stages that you go through. And I think that let me just be quick because obviously I could talk for hours on this subject, but very briefly, if I were to kind of say what those stages are, number one, it would be, and this is going way back to my early teen years when I read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That was my first self-help book, and I was whatever age, 13 or 14 in it. And that was the first time I realized that, like, hang on, wait a second, actually, there is this thing called perception, and different people might have different perceptions on an event, but even more than that, you can actually change your perception of something that's going on in life. And so that was stage one, right? Is this realization that, hang on, I can look at something differently. I can change the way I think about things, right? Then later on, there was this stage of like kind of realizing that negativity is actually really detrimental to one's success, and that it's not good to complain, it's not good to criticize, it's not good to be in those low vibrations. But what I remember is that when I first started learning that, I started to become super like over concerned about other people's negativity, with the worry that it would influence me and it would somehow make me negative, the same way that as like if somebody was sneezing and had like flu-like symptoms, that I would catch the same thing. So I started to get really like, oh my gosh, no, they're being negative. And then it would actually make me upset because I would think like, this is not good. Now I'm not going to be successful because there's negative people around me. And that quote that you're the average of the 5 people around you. Well, the person next to me right here is being negative, so now I'm going to turn out unsuccessful in life. It was this really interesting sort of cascade of negativity, right? And so that was some sort of like intermediary stage that actually took me several months, maybe if not years, to get through. And then finally, I would say that I've reached a stage right now where when other people are negative, my number one goal is to, as soon as I can, cancel out that whatever they said, cancel it out in my head, and return my full focus to my goals. And so that means I actually remove attention from their negativity. I don't add any attention to their negativity. I just remove my attention from it, and I pull that attention back onto my goals. So I don't know, I just said a lot there. So I'm wondering if it sparked anything for you. Go ahead.
I like that a lot. I love how you say like negativity is detrimental to your success, because I was reading a post, and I feel like this roots from the sort of idea that when people first get into manifesting and like the law of attraction and everything, they sort of go through that phase where they're like, I have to be positive all the time. Kind of like you were saying, like, oh, well, if somebody says one negative word around me, like, oh God, like that means I'm in the wrong path. I'm hanging out with people who are being, quote unquote negative. And that's that sort of phase that you go through. So for sure, I love that. And so I saw this post on Instagram, and it said something, but the biggest words that caught me were, a negative experience is itself a positive experience. So it's like realizing that you are in a negative state is going to bring you more positivity than force feeding it down into the shadows of your soul and pretending it's a positive experience. So I think that's like my thoughts on sort of like balance, I would say. Like, to go back to the first one, my thoughts on you have to be positive all the time, in order to bring positivity to you, and you always have to be nice to people. My thoughts on that are, it's wrong. I completely disagree with that in every way, because I've tried being nice to everyone I meet, and it literally only brings like damage to my soul. Like, if you're for everyone, you're for no one. Pick and choose your people. Not everyone are your people. And so that's like my thoughts on that. And then my thoughts on negativity is detrimental to your success is something that would be the opposite of that beginner's phase. And I think that my thoughts on that would be, it's kind of hard to swallow. Honestly, it's kind of hard to swallow that you kind of have to fork up that you're that you're having a bad experience, negative experience. So I think that my thoughts on that are, for anyone who's beginning out there with manifesting or the law of attraction and stuff, like try not to get sucked into that phase of, like 100% positivity and optimism all the time, because it'll take you down like a really, I personally think it'll take you down like a dark and very lonely road, because you'll feel lonely because you're crossing out other things of life, like other life forms, emotions, energy waves. I'm not sure what they would be called. But yeah, definitely make sure to experience that bad, because it's just going to bring you a better experience than it would if you were, covering it up with optimism or positivity.
Yeah, right on. I think that the positive thinking, I guess you could call it a movement, positive thinking movement, or the positive thinking emphasis. I think it does have a sort of a negative side effect, or it backfires sometimes, because an overemphasis on positive thinking, in my opinion, can cause a regression in some people. And when I say regression, I mean it makes them go backwards, mentally, rather than evolve mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And to be more specific, it really, in my opinion, triggers black and white thinking. And in this instance, the black and white would be positive and negative. And the truth about reality is, I like to say reality is diversity, because, and not diversity meaning, we have a mixture of genders and ethnicities. I'm not talking about that diversity. I'm talking about good or bad diversity. So, for instance, my computer is new, and in many ways it's very good, but right now it's not working, and that's why I'm doing the podcast through the telephone, right? Or what's another example? people have positive and negative traits a lot of the time, and we too often we either demonize or we idolize certain people, or celebrities, for instance, and that's an example of black and white thinking. Getting into a car crash seems like clearly a negative experience. However, there's a positive in it, which is you might gain experience filing an insurance claim, when, up till now you didn't know how to file an insurance claim. And that, yeah, that sounds kind of absurd, that like, oh, I'm going to point out the positivity in like the car crash, but the truth of the matter is that there is always positives to everything, and there's always negatives to everything. And it's really important to be able to see those if you're going to actually get things done. And so I think that what's even superior to simple positive thinking is this sort of non-black and white thinking, is this ability to, when an event happens, that it might be great and it might not be great. And I think that's way more in alignment with reality. There's a lot more I could say on that, but I wanted to pass it to you and see if you had any thoughts on that.
I think it's interesting always the way you approach things, and I love to see what goes on in your head as we glide through topics. But yeah, that's definitely a good way to see it, because like no matter how bad something can be, you can always focus your mind on finding a way to cheer you up about it, even if the only way to cheer you up is you recognizing that it is in fact a negative situation. Just to bring clarity to yourself, like, oh well, I just realized this is a negative situation. And honestly, most of the time it like immediately sort of gets a lot of like clouded energy away from you. But shall we move on to another concept?
Yeah, do you have one in mind?
Yeah, let's think. So I guess like one could be like, don't text the other person first, like when in a relationship. I feel like I've been seeing that for so long. And I used to like really believe it. So it became like one of those core beliefs inside of me. And it made me think that like I'm not allowed to text him first. And that if I do text him first, I'm gonna be like weird for it because I'm not supposed to text him first. So when I would text him first, a lot of weird energy would be delivered through that text with it, because of that core belief that like I've always been told that like a boss ass woman, I guess, never texts a man first. And I personally have grown from experience. So my thoughts on that are, yeah, like don't text them first all the time. Like, but like if you have something funny to say, and like there's good energy with it, like text first, like go ahead and send a text. Or like if you found their favorite shirt that they've been looking for like weeks and you happen to run into it, send them a picture and like let them know. Like, but I feel like a lot of people and women, feel almost not shamed. I'm not sure the word to use for it, but almost shamed that like they're texting him first because they feel clingy or like weak or something like that. And I guess those are just my thoughts on that. I'm like a 50-50 with that one. What are your thoughts on it?
I see. Well, this is an interesting topic. Like, where do you think that comes from? Is it just social conditioning? How are the girls getting this message that they shouldn't be the first one to send a message?
I'm thinking it came from when like, because like obviously, I mean, everyone's been hurt in the world, but like women are really like, sometimes like we're a bit more emotionally involved. So I guess from like past hurt, like past female hurt, we've sort of taken this saying like, oh baby, don't text him first, sort of thing. And so it's been ingrained in our heads that we're not supposed to text them first. So I just think that's where it came from. I think it came from like hurt, and then like pulling back, like almost sort of like a form of self-sabotage, I think, and pulling ourselves back to, I guess, sort of stand our ground. But I truthfully don't think that there's much ground to stand in that, colorful circle. Think that I don't think that proves anything if you're not texting him first. That's what came to mind.
Right. What I like is that you pointed out that there's situations that clearly are good exceptions to any rule. And like you were saying, if you see something funny, then, just go ahead and be the first one to send a message and send that funny message or whatever it is. And I think that certainly speaks to a truth of reality, which is that that's sort of a blanket rule, that the woman cannot be the first one to text, that's not a hard and fast rule the same way that like the law of gravity is. Now, where it gets, because it's a social construct, right? It's not a physical thing. Gravity is a physical thing, and so it behaves much more like laws. But when it comes to social dynamics, I think there are laws, but those laws exist at the level of energy, not at the level of, who sends a message first. So the significance of who sends a message first, I think, is what it represents at the level of energy. And what it represents at the level of energy is investment, emotional investment, and investment of attention. So where it kind of makes sense to not be the person to message first, whether you're a guy or a girl, one of the reasons it would make sense not to is if you were trying to not show interest first. Like if you were playing some sort of game where you wanted the other person to show interest first, or you know what I mean? So that's an example. Another reason why people might follow this rule is kind of like, as you alluded to, is that by not being the first one to message, you essentially make it impossible to end up being like quote unquote rejected. Like because if that message goes unreturned, then 95% of people are going to interpret that negatively as, oh, they don't like me, or oh, I'm worthless, or oh, this is you get what I'm trying to say, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It reflects, but see, so the issue is not really an issue of who messages first. It's an issue of self-love, and it's an issue of social awareness, and all sorts of things. But it's very complex. It's very complex. It says a lot about the complexity of human emotions and social dynamics, I think. But obviously, being sort of a logical person, I'm always going to try to make sense of that sort of that sort of stuff, even if it's not so cut and dry as something like gravity or other physics concepts.
So would you say that you agree with that? Like, agree with the thing, like, don't text him first, or him text her first? Would you say that you agree with that, or would you say that you don't? Or is it 50-50?
In are you talking about in sort of like a dating context?
Yeah, like a dating context. Like, do you agree with, like, oh, never text him first or never text her first?
I text first most of the time because I'm here to get things done. I'm here to meet people. I'm here to push relationships forward. I'm not here on planet Earth to be to sit back and hope that the relationships I want walk into my life. I'm here to make them happen. And but another fact though is that I'm male, and so at the level of energy, I carry masculine energy, meaning yang energy. So if you think of the yin yang symbol and male and female energy, male energy is projective energy. It's sunlight. It gives energy, and female energy is receptive energy, right? So following that model, it makes sense for the guy to message first and for the girl to then receive that message. And there's a lot more I could say about that, but that's one way to look at it philosophically, is to look at it in terms of yin and yang. But that being said, well, I don't know if there's much I have to add to that. I don't know, does that make sense? Does it answer what you were asking?
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. Like, of course, like I think it's definitely more of a man's job to text her first, but like I don't think that I don't agree with like the images, depicting that we women are not allowed to message a man first. Otherwise, he's going to think, otherwise we're going to be making ourselves come off like too easy, or that we want to talk to them. I personally don't agree with that. But like I think it should be kind of like a yin and yang thing, or like honestly like a go with the flow energy thing. Like if you want to text them first, text them, and then if you want to text her first, text her. If you don't want to text her, don't. And vice versa. And when we're in tune with those cycles and the alignment of our most authentic selves, I think that messaging comes naturally. Like send a message, don't send a message. And when we're both, me and the person I guess I'm in like an intimate relationship with, I think that it would work out well if we were just both our authentic selves and didn't overthink anything. Shall we move on to the next concept?
Sure, yeah.
All right, you think of one.
Let's see. What else is common self-help advice? Let's see, there's things like handling the most difficult task first. What do you think of that one?
I actually quite like that one, because like, have you ever ridden a bike in the wind?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so would you rather like get that over with first? Like if you're going on like a 10-mile bike ride, would you rather, ride through the wind for the first 5 so you can swiftly, go on with the last 5? Or would you rather, swiftly ride and then go really hard against the wind on the last 5? I think it comes down to stuff like that. And if like you have kind of a messy house, but like your dishes are like right there, like would you rather do like the shitty dishes first, or would you rather like sweep the floors and like tidy up your desk? Like I feel like I actually really like handling the hardest tasks first, so that way I can glide through easily on my journey, my trip, my action that I'm doing, my activity.
Right.
So what do you think on it?
I think that that willpower definitely decreases as the day goes on. I think we have the most at the beginning of the day, and a lot of self-help books tend to say that. So it kind of makes sense to accomplish something big at the beginning of the day. At the same time, there's also a huge benefit to using momentum. And if you build these small victories as the day goes on, then that allows for like, if you're just essentially allowing more and more energy to flow as the day goes on, then by midday or mid-afternoon, it can allow the possibility for some very significant things to happen, much like you take a car from 0 miles per hour to 60 over a long stretch. By the time you're going 60 miles an hour, you're capable of of much more. Like, you can actually, if there was some sort of like a barrier of plastic cones or whatever, I don't know, you would go through it much easier than you would going 2 miles an hour. So there's that principle also. Now, how does this translate to actually like doing everyday things in your day? I think I've been more captivated lately by this concept of the highest leverage task. So highest leverage meaning, like, if there's one thing that if I do it, like, actually everything else becomes easier. And here I'm sort of borrowing a little bit of phrasing from this book called The One Thing by Gary Keller, which I've talked about in past episodes, I think. But it's about the idea that, and here I'm going to kind of put it in my own words, that if there's 10 different things that you could do right now, that all of them would kind of, in some degree, advance you towards your goals, is there one of them that would actually have the highest return on that investment of energy? Is there one that kind of is, it carries more weight than the others? So for instance, if I did my morning workout, first thing in the morning, if I did that one thing, and then the other 9 things on my list, I'm like, I can knock them out so much more easily because I have that endorphin rush from the morning, then it makes sense to do that workout first and then the other 9 items. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think you explained it really good. And I really, really, really like that, because it's like my thoughts on it are, I think I really like the one with working out, because like when I work out in the morning, I feel like I'm really good and like I can do this. And then I'm trying to think of like another task. I don't know, like when I get off of like a client coaching call, like obviously that's definitely of high leverage and it needs to be done. But it's nice because after that, I gain inspiration from my beautiful clients, and I sort of have that momentum to continue on, I guess, with the other, 8 things that I wanted to do in that day. So I guess I quite like the concept that you brought up, the societal concept that you brought up, because it's like handling the hardest tasks first, right? But then I guess you could also say handling the tasks with the most leverage first, as well. Because I really like the way you said that, like which one is going to give you the most energy to propel onward with the other 8-9 things that you had on your list that day. So yeah, I think I'd agree with handle the hardest task first, and I also agree with handle the ones with the most leverage first. I guess it depends on the day. Like leverage and hardest tasks, like say I woke up and my task with my most leverage was a client call, and I had it at 7 a.m. Now, is that going to be harder than working out? Probably not. Working out can get pretty damn hard sometimes, but in that case, I'd be handling the task with the most leverage first, as opposed to the task that was the hardest. Because I don't, maybe I don't feel like waking up at 6 a.m. to get in like a balls sweaty freaking workout and then go, coach my client. I think I'd rather coach my client first and then go onward with my workout, which takes, leverage over hardest that particular day.
Mm-hmm.
So would you agree with that then? Handling the hardest task first?
I think there's so much complexity to it, and I think that what I know for sure is that there's value in kind of designing, and that's what I want people to kind of see, is that there's so much possibility. There's so much that we do have decision power over, right? I think a lot of people, I mean, the sort of famous self-help dichotomy is, there's some things you can control and some things you can't, and you shouldn't focus on the things you can't control. And of course, that's true, but I think that people a lot of the times don't follow that, and so they end up focusing on things that they can't control, such as, if someone in the room is complaining, then, a self-help fan might see that as a big problem, and they might think, oh, I wish I was in a place that didn't have this negativity, blah, blah, blah. And, but all of that is investment of energy into that other person's negativity. And so it's really, that comes down to the self-help aficionado not really patrolling his or her own attention, what they put attention on, their own outflow of energy, right? They're allowing too much energy to flow towards that negative person, even if they're looking at that person as something not to do, right? That's sort of the fallacy, that they think it's okay, or it seems on the surface to be okay, because you're saying, here's an example of what not to do. But if you really, really understand the mind, then you spend zero time talking about what not to do, and you spend all of your time focused on what to do. And that's, to me, is like, that's a huge takeaway that I have to practice every day, even nowadays.
I love that. I think that the words that you ended with penetrated me the most. I think that that's really good. So shall we think of another topic?
We can, if we've got one. Otherwise we would wrap up, because we're maybe around 30 minutes. But if you've got one, I'm ready to go.
I did have one, but for some reason it's left my mind. I had one and it was good.
It's gonna come back in the next 2 minutes, I'll bet you, because I'm gonna use that to talk about something really quick that is an example for me, which is what I learned this week is just how beneficial it is to be non-resistant. And it's almost like a Taoist concept, to be like non-resistant and to just like let things happen, because it's very passive. And self-help is always preaching proactive approaches and not being passive. But I feel like there's a time for that. For instance, I was trying to figure out this project at work, how to design a certain project, and I knew there was something, a way to do it the best way, and I couldn't figure it out. And I'm there sitting at my desk trying to figure it out, and I'm like, all right, whatever, I'm just going to go to lunch and just come back, because I can't take it anymore, right? I was already like annoyed. But when I went to lunch, I got my mind off of it. my body eased. And again, we're at the fusion of mind and body. So my body relaxed. I was eating, eating some food, and boom, the idea came to me because I relaxed and I opened up myself for energy to flow in, and the inspiration came, and it ended up solving the project. And so that came by almost like moving away from it and just kind of going passive, and it actually worked for me,
Yeah. I love
Did you get your
that.
idea back?
I actually haven't, but let's review the topics that we've already went over, and sort of where we stand in agreement with them, and maybe it'll come back. So our
Okay.
first topic was the positive outlook all the time, 100%. So that is one no that I don't agree with. And then Robert, what's your standpoint on that?
That it's, I mean, on the surface, the reason it's a problem is because people look at it from a superficial perspective. Sorry, instead of looking at the deeper meanings of it, which then reveals that it's way better to just think not in terms of black and white. So I guess I would have to say I would disagree, I guess.
Okay. And then what was the second one that we went over? The texting.
I think it was about who texts first. Yeah.
Yes, who texts first. So I'm 50-50 on that one. What's your final standpoint?
50-50 meaning that that on the premise that that the girl should not text first.
I don't think she should text first all the time. I do think that what you were saying with yin and yang, and I do think that the man should be the one texting first. That's what he's supposed to woo the woman. I think that's so lovely, but I don't think that it should be completely one-sided. So I'm like 50-50.
Right. Yeah, I don't think it's a rule to expect that to happen 100% of the time, that one person texts first. To me, that's just out of touch with reality, because as I said, reality is diversity. And so there's, it's much more, what's much more important is kind of like the specifics of the situation, the personalities involved. There's so much complexity to it. That's like taking a brain and saying like, are these neurons like this way or that way? Like neurons are very complex, like there's trillions or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yes. So the next topic was, you picked this one, and it was handling the hardest tasks first. And I agreed with that 100%. I like that sort of life hack, life advice. I like that one. I agree. What about you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's all these different ways you can take that one. You could take it as the most difficult task first. I think Brian Tracy talks about eat that frog, do the most unpleasant task first. Then there's other ways you can frame it, like, do the highest leverage task first. But I think, any way you slice it or dice it, there is value in kind of ordering your tasks a certain way. And I see that in all of the self-help books I read, and I see it in all of the successful people that I study, that there's a certain order and that they approach their tasks with.
Love it. And then did we do one after that or no?
I sort of mentioned this idea of passivity, non-resistance. So I think that in self-help, there's a tendency to, similar to like positive thinking, there's a tendency to think that like you can force everything to happen, like you can make it happen. But there's also times where it's most prudent to actually like step back and sort of let things happen or kind of allow an idea to come to you. And one of the reasons I think that's true is that at the level of energy, the more energy you put into resistance, like, I should have my idea already. Why have I not, done it? I got to make this happen. It's too much investment at the psychic level, psychic energy. It's too much investment there. And I think that all of that energy is essentially like you pushing your foot really hard on the brake pedal. And it seems like you're putting in a lot of energy, and it's like, why am I not going anywhere? I'm putting in all of this effort, but you're putting it in to the wrong direction. You're pushing on the brake pedal, not on the gas pedal. And that's the difference there. So yeah, you get my metaphor, right?
I do. And I would have to say that I agree with the sort of the life term for, quote unquote passivity, surrender, AKA like stop fighting the resistance, like just let the resistance be, just surrender to it. So I think I'd agree with that one, because I think that it definitely sort of goes hand in hand with sort of negativity being detrimental to your success. Both help you propel forward when you sort of just surrender and sort of quote unquote be passive. So I'd agree with that one.
Yeah, this was cool. I think my overall reflection on today is that it amuses me how human beings, including myself, we all try to find these sort of rules and general laws to bring order to life, and things, whether it's think positive or do this or do that. Like we try to institute these guidelines, and yet I think that the true professional really understands the subtleties of every moment, but they understand what needs to be done, and what needs to be done can differ depending on the specifics of the situation. You can't go to Michael Jordan and you say, should you shoot a basketball like this way? Should I flick my wrist this way or flick my wrist the other way? Like it's that's a silly question to ask him, because he's going to be like, well, are you doing a fadeaway? Are you at the end of the game? Are you at the beginning of the game? Are you down by 1 point? Are you shooting a 3-pointer? Are you doing a layup? Like there's so much richness in every single moment. But clearly what I like and what I like about sports is that clearly Michael Jordan knows how to get the job done. He's demonstrated that by getting results. And that to me shows that he's attuned to reality. Now, somebody in the stands who watches the game and then comments that, oh, he should have shot the ball that way. He should have done this. He shouldn't have passed in that situation, blah, blah, blah. There's tons of commentators like that. But to me, they are out of touch with reality, because I swear you put them on the court, they will not be able to get anything done. And maybe it sounds silly that I kind of worship getting things done, but hey, that's where I am philosophically right now in life, and that's what I stand by. So any last thoughts from you?
Not really. I think you've left me stumped for the night.
Well, good topic. It got me going. So this is
I
a
love
lot
that.
to think about, and yeah, maybe we can put in the show notes some of our favorite self-help books, and
That sounds
that way
good.
people can check it out. And I think more people should be studying self-help. It's a great field, and yeah, we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week.